So, welcome back to our next episode of the Let's Chat Derbyshire podcast. I'm Luke and I work in the Public Health, Mental Health and Suicide Prevention team. We hope you're doing well, and today we're really lucky to be joined by Jo Hall, one of our consultant clinical psychologists. Today we'll be talking around self-care limitations, but also answering your questions around talking therapies. If you've not already, follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. We've included some questions on there, so if anyone does have any other questions around talking therapies, then we'll more than happily answer them on social media. So just before we start, we like to ask our guests how they're doing out of 10. So Jo, how are you doing out of 10 today?
I'm going to give it an 8.
That's good. That is strong.
I went boxing last night.
Amazing.
And there's nothing like a bit of boxing to lift the mood,
Definitely
I have to say.
At least you got that out, because I don't want to be going home with any black eyes, so I'll be nice, don't worry. That's amazing. That's great. So we're going to start off just talking around some talking therapies. So earlier on in the week, we put some questions on our social media asking people just to DM us or email us around any questions they may have. So the first question is, what is talking therapy and how can it help someone?
So talking therapy it's all about kind of a psychological treatment. So you would be there with somebody that's trained to talk to you about really whatever kind of is important to you. So it's a really broad kind of range of things, but the whole kind of key thing is that it's someone that's trained in providing that support, and it's all about kind of a psychological approach to treatment as opposed to kind of a physical treatment, I suppose.
That's great. That's really good. So who can have talking therapy? Is there any age requirements? Is it free, or how would someone access it?
So most people could have talking therapy. There's lots of different kind of programs and schemes. So one of the main kind of national ones, kind of NHS Talking Therapies, that's for kind of more kind of common mental health problems, so anxiety and depression.
Yeah. So what could evidence-based therapy be if someone was thinking, it might help me? What would that look like for them?
So I guess there's a few things. So when we say evidence-based therapy, what we're talking about is there is kind of a lot of research that's gone on to say, actually, if you've got this particular problem, so this type of anxiety, there's a lot of evidence from a lot of different people, this approach could be helpful, so that the therapist isn't just guessing what might help you, they're using what research would say could help you. So that could be for some problems, but not every problem, cognitive behavioural therapies, that's maybe CBT you might have heard of. There are some other treatments, things like EMDR, that are quite useful for people with trauma. So depending on what your difficulty is or the thing that you really want to focus on, there'll be something that could be in the evidence base for you.
That's good.
And if you go to kind of for talking therapies, you'll have an initial assessment and they'll work out, what's the thing that you really want to work on together. And then if so, what type of treatment might be the right one for you? That's
good. So it's not a one-shoe-fits-all approach, really, then. It's looking at the person as an individual and finding what's best for them.
Absolutely. So somebody might have had one type of treatment and it may not have quite worked for them, and it might be they want to try a slightly different approach. That's really common.
That's great. If someone was interested in accessing it, some people may want to speak to someone in person or on the phone or maybe over a computer. How does talking therapies work? Is it everything's over the phone, or is there options to be on the phone or in person?
There's options, so absolutely. Great. So you're right, some people prefer face-to-face, some people feel much more comfortable online, maybe because of their mental health difficulties. Actually leaving the house is tricky at first, so they might find online easier. For many people, telephone works best, that's more convenient. So all the different providers should provide different ways that you have therapy. It's about kind of working out what you want. Some people have it individually. Some of the providers will offer group therapy.
That's good.
So, and a range of things can be different for people. Some people might think, I wouldn't want group therapy, but for many people, despite maybe not wanting it initially, in my experience, a lot of people will say, actually, that was really helpful to meet other people in the same boat as me.
That's great.
Actually kind of makes me feel a little bit less alone. So again, different things work for different people and at different points in their lives.
I think that's great. It's looking at it as a a person approach rather than it just, being everyone needs the same help, and it doesn't work like that. I think just for people listening, I guess we can just say we've mentioned evidence-based a lot, haven't we? And I think within public health and the NHS, everything we do is led by evidence. So that could be research into something. It's not that someone just thinks of an idea and runs with it. So I just wanted to sort of explain why we keep saying evidence, because it's our whole approach. We need to make sure, I guess, what's being done is guided by some research or something that shows that it does work. So it's good that the evidence is showing that actually there's a range of options available to people do work. And it's great that if someone went into one avenue but then thought, this isn't working for me, there's always, other doors, isn't there, for them to access.
And perhaps another important thing to say, so you've got the kind of NHS Talking Therapies, which anyone can access, but there are also other ways of getting therapy. So if you've got a particular problem, there might be a local charity that offers its counselling around some particular problem. So,
correct me if I'm wrong, I saw, so if someone may not be well enough to look themselves, family members can refer in with the person's permission, can't they, or support them to go through that process.
So again, to kind of access therapy, you can self-refer. So kind of NHS Talking Therapies, you can go on the computer, you can send a form of expressing form of interest on there. You can ring them up and just do that yourself. But let's say someone in your life that maybe that feels a really big step forward, but they do want the therapy and they've said, yes, I agree to it. You could sit together and do that. Yeah,
that's really, really interesting. So if someone themselves, or maybe it's someone's family, how would they go about accessing it then? Would, like you said, is the form just online, or can they ring up, or is it, I guess, both?
You can ring up. There's online forms.
Oh, great. That's really good. I guess we're in the description, and we'll put some links in. We'll put the telephone number in, just so people can find it a bit easier.
Absolutely.
We'll put a link into the Emotional Health and Wellbeing website as well, I think. So if anyone thinks maybe this isn't for me, there's other options. And like you said, there's, more local providers that can offer something else that may be more suitable.
Yeah, so it's things like bereavement support with particular kind of issues or experiences of abuse, for example. So there's a whole range of things where people might think, actually, I want to go to an organisation that really specialises in therapy for that particular experience.
So talk a lot about accessing it, but I think making that first step can be really daunting for someone. I know when I was struggling, just getting to that point of wanting to get help or having the confidence to ask for it, there's still a lot of stigma, I think, around talking therapies. I don't think anyone should feel ashamed needing to get support. So once someone's made that first step, what can they expect maybe from that initial appointment?
So usually at the beginning, you would have a sort of assessment of someone. That might be over the phone, that might be in person. At that assessment, the therapist will be trying to find out about your situation to work out, what experience have you had, maybe what therapies have you tried before, how do you kind of process the world, to try and work out how they can best help you. So they will ask quite a lot of questions in that first appointment. But let's say they ask you something, you think, I don't feel ready to talk about that, I don't want to talk about that. You're absolutely in control, and you can say, I don't want to talk about that. So one of the things people often say to me is, I'm going to have to say everything. Therapy's all about, kind of sit on the couch and say it all. And actually, trying to really dispel that, you don't have to say everything. You are in control. It's about you. And it's definitely more than okay to say, I don't feel that I'm ready to talk about that right now.
That's really good
just
to
know that. But that aim of that first session will be to try and get an understanding of you. So they can kind of work out, what are the reasons for some difficulties you're having? How do you tend to cope with things in your life, and how can they use that knowledge, what helps you cope, to really plan some therapy for you that's going to have the best chance of helping you.
That's really good. So after the first appointment, it can be really hard, like you said, opening up. If someone doesn't have anything to say, or they may not have the confidence to, what happens then, I guess,
Yeah, it's a really common one. So when people come to see me, they'll often be really worried and say, well, I'm no good at talking about my feelings, I'm not a talker, my partner said I should come here, I'm not really sure about this. And we are trained to sit with people and support people to talk and to help people take their time, and everybody is different. Some people take a bit of time to open up. Some people would do a lot of talking, but actually maybe take a bit longer to really say what they're really feeling. So there can be quite talkative people that maybe still take a while to really start to open up and to feel safe enough to talk. The reality is, and I'll often say this, it's the first time, that person and I have met each other. Yeah. So actually, it takes a while to trust someone, and that is really normal. And to expect someone to walk into a room or pick up a phone call and just say lots of stuff about themselves, that's a lot, isn't it, really? So it does take time, and because reassuring people that, take the time you need. As therapists, we're trained to know that it takes time to help people to open up, but also to respect the pace that people need to go with. And most people that say to me, I'm going to have nothing to say, or, this week I've got nothing to talk about, generally we have a really useful conversation. And one of the things I often say to people is sometimes when you've overthought what you're going to say, it's kind of not necessarily as impactful sometimes as when someone actually just sits there and just allows themselves to talk about what kind of comes to them. It comes a bit less unplanned, but actually sometimes the things someone really needed to talk about.
Yeah, I think
you wouldn't expect the therapist to be sharing a lot about themselves. No. And that can feel really hard, I think, for people who might be thinking, it seems a bit strange. I'm telling you everything, and yet you're telling me very little, if anything, about you. That's a really important part of a lot of therapist training. And the reason is that what's really unique about therapy, and I think one of the things that makes it so powerful, is that you come and talk to your therapist, you don't have to worry about me. If you, for example, knew your therapist was having a bad day, you might think, goodness, well, the best I'll tell you I've had a difficult day too, because you're already not feeling well. So actually, it's really important that the therapist gets their support from elsewhere. So they should have a good supervisor who they can get their support from, and that they help whoever they're speaking to know that they don't need to be protected, that they'll not judge them for anything that's said. And again, the more a therapist might talk about their own personal life, it then becomes harder to be that person, kind of who they need to be. So I think that's a really different part of therapy from kind of having a conversation with a friend, but it's also what makes it really powerful, because sometimes if you talk to a friend, people worry about kind of saying something that might be judged. They worry about putting too much on someone, and because of that, often people, certainly that's how I feel. Is I feel like I protect people in my life from things because I think, gosh, you've all got a lot on your plate. Whereas actually with a therapist, you don't have to worry about that.
It's not going to be a burden, is it?
Absolutely not. They are there to hear it. They can hear it no matter how hard that thing is, and how much you're thinking, gosh, I've never told anyone that. Actually, that's okay. They're the person you can tell that to, and it will go no further, which I know comes onto one of our thoughts around confidentiality.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just safe, isn't it? It's a safe space that someone can take those steps to start opening up. And interestingly, a few episodes ago we spoke to Chloe and we did some breathing exercises there. So if anyone does want to know how to control your breathing a bit, I think it was episode 3 when we spoke to her. So have a listen, have a watch. But we'll also share some bits on social media as well around managing anxiety, especially if you're in crisis or really struggling. Managing those emotions can be really difficult, I think.
Absolutely.
So, Jo, it's been great what we've covered. I think another anxiety or worry that people have is confidentiality. If I go to therapy, will my employer know? Will my family know? Will my GP know that? Who will find out, really? If you could just give us a bit around how the confidentiality works between the person and the therapist, that'd be, I think, really good to hear.
So confidentiality is like the cornerstone of therapy. It's absolutely massive. So really important, your sessions are confidential. So that means what you say to your therapist should not be shared beyond that therapy room. The only person the therapist may share details with, but again, non-identifiably, is their supervisor, because they will get that support with their practice. The only time that that's not the case is if anything that's said means that the person that said it indicates they might be at risk of harm, or that anyone else might be, or there's anything which kind of contravenes the law. So in those circumstances, almost always the therapist should say, I'm going to have to share this because of this. So almost invariably they would tell you if they're going to have to, but that is a very rare circumstance. But that would be the limits, because they also need to keep you safe and to keep other people safe.
Yeah, I think that's good. Again, it goes back to that safe space, but there is a line, and it sounds like it's a very clear line, though. So when that is crossed, that's when you will have to take it a step further. But up until that point,
it's a confidential space. Absolutely,
that's really good.
And that's really important. So that all therapy training, that is the app.
I found this really useful personally, and I hope people listening have. If anyone is listening and does want more question and answer sort of time, then let us know. There's so many other topics we could talk about, and we could talk about this all day. But I would like to touch on this podcast. It will be coming out around Christmas. I think it's a time of mixed emotions for people, isn't it? It's a great time for some, but it can be a really hard time for others. And I wonder if we could spend a bit of time talking about the self-care of over Christmas. It's a very full-on time, isn't it? So I guess, I don't know if you've got any top tips really around Christmas of how someone can look after themselves and, each other. As we know, Christmas can be a really hard time of the year, Joe, can't it? I think for people, even though it is great and has all this magical stuff around it, it can be horrible for others. Spending a lot of time with family, there's sometimes a lot of alcohol, consumed and stuff. So what are a few tips I think that people can practice just to look after themselves throughout Christmas and into the new year?
Really good question to think about. And so many different things. Again, everybody's different things work for different people. Some things that maybe are helpful to think about are boundaries. So it's absolutely okay to set your own boundaries in terms of your time, your energy. So for example, if there are things planned day after day and actually for your well-being that's no good, it's absolutely okay to say, I'm really sorry, that does sound lovely, I'm going to have to say no, I've got a really busy period. Again, in terms of kind of boundaries in the days, let's say Christmas Day for you is a long day with lots of people around and that feels really difficult. It's absolutely okay to set that time boundary and say, I need to take half an hour out, I need some fresh air on my own, or whatever it might be. That's not rude, it's not selfish, it is you looking after you. And that's really true.
I think it's important. I don't know, a lot of times when people maybe say that, I'll come with you, I think it's okay just to turn around and say, look, I just want to be by myself for half an hour. I'm fine, but I just need some space. And like you said, it's okay to do that. I think, like you said, planning. If you've got a busy time ahead of you, put some clear time in for yourself. Make sure that you do have that time to look after yourself, definitely. And
it can also be really useful to kind of take a little think before the Christmas period. What are your early signs that you are beginning to kind of get to a point where you really need a break? Because ideally, if you can catch that a little bit earlier for yourself, you can also avoid kind of taking a bit of a dip. So if you know that your sleep going a bit off track, or that you, for example, you can't concentrate so well on the TV and that's a sign for you that you're getting a bit overwhelmed, know those early signs and then be kind to yourself. I think it's absolutely okay to respond to that. You know yourself, you know when you need that break. And it's one of those ones where a lot of people at Christmas might feel like everyone's kind of dependent on them and they're really responsible for it, how it all goes. You might have heard that phrase about putting your oxygen mask on first before others. And it's really kind of, in terms of self-care, it's totally okay to kind of put your oxygen mask on so that you can be there for other people. Because actually, if we neglect ourselves, and that might be in terms of, for some people, if there's a time of drinking quite a bit of alcohol, that could be very difficult for some people. So again, it being okay to sort of look after yourself so that you can be there for other people. I
think, normally a lot of alcohol is consumed. That alone can be hard for people around, but it doesn't fix the problem. If you notice yourself struggling or finding the day hard, drinking the extra few cans of beer and stuff won't make you feel better. It won't make your in-laws more bearable. So just acknowledging it and taking that time out and communicating. I think, saying, look, I don't want to spend all day doing this. Don't go through it, just try and bear with it. I think it's important to, like you said, look before, set those clear boundaries and communicate with whoever you're spending Christmas with, because they maybe feel the same. So, it
absolutely
might really help.
And you, like, your feelings, you have a right to feel what you feel. So it's okay to say, I am feeling this way. Your feelings are valid. Someone else might have different feelings. Someone else might be loving it all. But actually, if you're feeling a certain way, that's how you're feeling. You have a right to feel that way.
Definitely.
And it's okay for you to then respond to that. And I think it can feel really hard to have a different feeling or different experience with other people. And also, let's be honest, sometimes it seems like everyone's feeling a certain way, but they're not.
No, definitely. It's quite an expensive time of the year, Christmas. People plan it all year, don't they? Saving up for it. How can someone maybe manage the money, but I guess more around the anxiety of it, the mental health side? If someone's worried about money, is there any tips or anything you'd be able to give?
So it's a really, really common worry at the moment. And again, there's lots of different things for people to consider. So if you've got financial worries, getting help early is a really important thing to do. Kind of seeking out the advice. For some people, planning at Christmas is really important, so that rather than costs running away with them, they work out, okay, this is how much I've got that I can spend, and this is how I'm going to choose to spend it. That might then involve saying no to things that are not on your priority list for spending. So knowing again that it's absolutely okay to do it your way. Christmas and the adverts can be very difficult to give an idea of what it should be. Actually, Christmas is whatever you make it to be, and there is no one way to do it. Everyone will do it differently. That's okay. And it may be really important, in terms of managing money, to say, actually, this is the bit that's important to us. The other stuff,
definitely,
we're doing differently.
Definitely, It is okay to say no if your mate's invited to the pub, or anything like that. You can say no. You can say, and you can say, look, because I think it's a tight time for everyone, and like you said, it's your priorities, and really making the most. And you make Christmas what you want it to be. You don't have to do it for other people.
That's it. There's a lot of pressure, isn't there? But it's about kind of making yourself important enough to say, actually, this is. I'm going to say no, or I'm going to say this because that's important to me or the people that are around me.
Going into, I guess, New Year over Christmas, it can really, I think, hit people, can't it? Especially in the new year and stuff. Just before we finish, is there any sort of top tips going into next year around what people could do really just to look after the well-being? Maybe if they're feeling a bit down after that Christmas period, is there anything you'd suggest just to help people get through it? So
lots of different things to think about. For some people, being connected to other people is really important. So making those plans to connect with friends or people and being around people can be really useful. Physical activity, moving, that's a real kind of mood booster. So again, even if you're feeling like it's the last thing you want to do, sometimes just saying, remind yourself, actually, I probably will feel better for doing this. And it, the evidence is so strong. Movement is one of the biggest ways to improve our mental well-being.
I really appreciate your time, Joe. It's been really insightful. Like I said, if people found this useful, let us know. If anyone's got any more questions maybe that we've not answered, let us know, and we can answer them on social media. Talking of social media, if you want to give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Threads, that's at DCCMHSP. And don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast. So thank you, everyone. You've been listening to the Let's Chat Derbyshire podcast. It's been great being able to talk to you, and see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.